Well, good morning and good afternoon and maybe good evening, everyone. This is Tim Marsh with Global Office. Thanks for joining our second session of GS1 and blockchain for the Global Forum. This is a live session, a bit of a repeat, of course, of earlier this week, but indeed live. So stay tuned or stand by. We're going to get started exactly at the top of the hour. And as a reminder, we'll be taking questions primarily in chat. So as the presenters are providing their materials and sharing with you, if you think of questions, please jot them down in the chat box. We'll be monitoring that and pausing for questions. We have time built in for questions at the end of the session. So please do that. And you want to make sure, try to keep yourself on mute if you're not talking. That'll help us with the recording today and keep the noise down. For those of you who have come in early, thank you for being so punctual. You will hopefully notice that on the email that you got today for the forum, that at the bottom of the email is the link that is out now actually live and working to actually rate the session. So if you are in sessions Monday and Tuesday and you were having trouble finding that link on the email that you got this morning will, of course, now work. So appreciate you doing that, not just for this session, but for others that you might have been part of. You can go in and rate them. All right, just about 2.5 more minutes here and we'll get going. Right, folks, for those of you who just joined, we've got just under 2 minutes before we get started. Thanks for coming in. Hello, folks. For those of you just joined, we have just under a minute. We'll get started. Good to see some familiar names today, as well as lots of new names. So welcome if this is your first forum. Glad you're here. Hope it's going well for you. And we'll say it a few times through this session today, but we'll be taking questions primarily through chat. So get your chat box open as the presenters are going through their materials. Get your questions taken down. And we will have time at the end of the session for Q&A, an in-depth Q&A with both of our speakers today. All right, I'm going to get started. So good morning, Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Tim Marsh with GS1 Global Office. Thanks for joining our GS1 and blockchain session today at the Global Forum 2021. This is our second session of the week. It is a live session, fully live, with very similar content to what you might have seen earlier this week if you attended that session. But we've made some improvements, so I'm glad you're here. A reminder of our competition law, or what you may know as the antitrust law. No discussion of prices, allocation of customers or products, boycotts, refuses to deal, or market share. If we feel the conversation is going in that direction, we'll table it until we can actually get the opinion of counsel. The full caution is available via the link as you see on the slide here, in case you're curious. I don't think I need to remind you of this. I think we're all really well-behaved GS1 and external stakeholders. So thank you for your professionalism today. And thank you for coming and joining in. What would really help us, specifically because we know there's lots of newcomers here this week, if you can change your name in the participants list to indicate whether your company or your member organization, that would be awesome. We'll get to know who you are and know exactly where in the world you're joining us from. As I mentioned, use chat. We rely on that heavily for the virtual event this week. And you certainly can take yourself off, raise a hand, we'll call on you. And you can ask your question verbally if you don't feel like typing it in. That's perfectly fine. So actually probably preferred, but I know with events like this, we tend to use chat. Now, last part, as I said it before we started, in the email you got today from the gs1.org on the forum, at the very bottom of the email is a link to actually rate the sessions. And that's the only way right now that you can actually get in to see the area where you can rate sessions that you might have attended, or of course this session. Would ask that you actually do that today after this session, so that we are hearing from you what you like about things, what could be improved, as a way for us to continually get better at this, especially with this being 100% virtual. Here's our journey today. I have a quick poll to get us all warmed up, and then I'll turn the floor over to our distinguished speakers. So certainly today we hope to raise your understanding, particularly around blockchain, traceability technologies and solutions, and how solution providers are working in this space, as well as how member organizations who are also trying to work in this space to kind of create an environment for collaboration and learning. So what we hope you'll be able to take away from today is some ways to innovate these ideas and these approaches to your work with serving industry, or if you're in industry, think about how GS1 standards can be used alongside solutions that provide visibility and some GS1 standards in together. Okay. So with that, excuse me, we'll have some fun. Let's have a poll. Let's hear from you. What brings you here today? These are multiple choice, so you can certainly answer more than one. Are you just looking to learn about blockchain technology? Are you working with SPs now who offer blockchain? So of course, you might want to learn some more. Are your customers asking about this? To see what your fellow GS1 MOs are doing, and maybe even to see how GS1 standards are used in technology with blockchain. All right, this is great. You guys are voting so quickly, I'm just gonna wait till you get to 100. Well, maybe not. There's still people coming in. Okay, let me end the polling there and we'll move on. So great. So thanks for letting us hear why you're here. This helps immensely. I think you will see some of this today, particularly from our speakers. So good to have your expectations. Okay, let me stop those. And let me introduce our speakers. So you may recognize the names. You may even recognize the companies. Of course, they probably recognize GS1 Switzerland, but we have Jackie Klaiss Brons from GS1 Switzerland. She's spoken a few times before our blockchain sessions because GS1 Switzerland's journey in exploration of this technology has been a long one. And then we have Branimir Rachik. He is one of the co-founders to Origin Trail, and he's currently the Chief Technology Officer. And Origin Trail also has been, I would say, a friend of GS1 over the years. I've featured them on previous blockchain sessions. They've also been part of our Global Forum plenary in the past. I think one of the reasons is they have a great platform and they are integrating GS1 as part of the platform. And they're doing new things with their customers, which is good for us to learn from. So with that, Jackie, I will stop sharing and turn the floor over to you.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are attending this session. Thank you for your time and your interest. Just give me a moment. Let's see, hold on. I don't know if this is the right one. Hold on. No? Or is it?
I think it is. I think you were just on the early slide. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Getting there. All right. Can everybody see the slide?
That's great. Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, perhaps to introduce what I will be talking about in the next few minutes. As Tim mentioned, I'm with GS1 Switzerland, heading the consulting team there. And perhaps to introduce where GS1 Switzerland has come from, where we plan to go. As an introduction, at last year's Global Forum, as Tim mentioned, I also was part of a panel and gave a presentation on GS1 Switzerland's efforts to integrate GS1 standards and blockchain. This year, Tim asked me again to be part of the GS1 and blockchain session. And I have to admit, 2020, for a variety of reasons, was not an easy year for us with respect to our efforts in this area. But at the same time, Tim and I both agreed that it would be worthwhile for me as a representative of GS1 Switzerland to share with you our experiences and perspectives. So I will do so by looking back a little bit and letting you know where our journey with blockchain began, what our experiences have been up until this point, what approach we are using, and the challenges that we have faced and the lessons learned out of those challenges. And in the end, also go into what way forward we see for GS1 Switzerland and its efforts to integrate GS1 standards and blockchain. So where did our journey begin? Personally, my journey began in the fall of 2018. I joined GS1 Switzerland in April 2018, and in the fall, I decided to, since that was an area where we wanted to gain more information and experience, I said that I would really look into blockchain, not so much from a technology standpoint, but from a use case and application standpoint. So I've done quite a bit of research. I've attended some seminars, also from other GS1 organizations about what they're doing. And in June of 2019, Switzerland had its first blockchain hackathon in Zurich. And I was, along with a few other companies, we served as coaches. Also, some colleagues of mine at GS1 Switzerland served as coaches for one of the verticals that was addressed in this hackathon or during this hackathon, and that was supply chain, particularly in the pharma industry. So the business application was tracking and traceability of shipments and or containers, anti-counterfeit, and temperature. So really temperature monitoring of sensitive goods. And we had 5 hacker teams that were in this vertical. And the GS1 standards that were used were the application identifiers GTIN, serialized GTIN, GLN, the GRI, and the SSCC. Also, in terms of data sharing, the hacker teams used EPCIS as a basis with the methodology what, when, where, why. And the blockchain technologies upon which their solutions were based were the public blockchain Ethereum and the consortium blockchain Corda. And just to give you a few impressions of the hackathon, this was a hackathon that lasted a little less than 2 days. We as coaches were busy over the span of 3.5 days. So for starters, here, if you follow my pointer, we provided the hacker teams with information about GS1 standards, how they could use them, and then really coached them during the span of the 42 hours of hacking. There were a total of 60 coaches for all of the verticals that were addressed during the hackathon, 200 hackers, 6,200 messages on Slack. We communicated via Slack with the hacker teams. So it was really also a way for us as GS1 Switzerland to gain information on what was possible. And so the bottom line for us from this hackathon was that GS1 standards and blockchain technology could be integrated. I also had the opportunity during the World Economic Forum last year in Davos, just before the lockdown hit Switzerland, to attend a session or entitled The Need for Interoperable Standards. So I was part of a panel of 7 presenters from different industries, providing our experiences or our approaches for addressing the interoperable standards and blockchain. So it also provided insights from a variety of perspectives as to what might be possible. What have our experiences been? In what types of projects are we participating in from a GS1 Switzerland standpoint? We have been part of an innovation project sponsored by the Swiss government called InnoSwiss since 2019. This is a 2-year project that will be ending soon. The focus was and has been blockchain and supply chain transparency. There have been companies from the healthcare, from the retail sector, also IT, logistics, and standards, namely GS1 Switzerland, who have participated in this project. The goal was, I have to be honest, to carry out pilot projects for the healthcare industry and the retail industry. Unfortunately, we didn't get to that point. I'll get into that a little bit later as to why. A lot of knowledge has been gained, but unfortunately, from our standpoint and from the other company's standpoint, we weren't able to carry out at least one pilot project, which was actually the goal of this innovation project. GS1 Switzerland has also entered into a couple of cooperation agreements with a company called Modem. They're a startup company in Zurich that manufactures data loggers. So we have cooperated with them to also integrate GS1 standards and blockchain in the pharma industry in particular for sensitive goods, and with another company with whom we most recently signed a cooperation agreement. Here we're looking at items like transparency, traceability, security, sustainability in the retail industry, in particular fruits and vegetables along the business-to-business supply chain. So not looking at the B2C at the moment, but really focusing on the B2B business. What is our approach with these cooperation or collaboration partners? We have a building block approach where we have defined very, very distinct steps. The first step being, of course, developing a business case. What's the business case for the integration of GS1 standards and blockchain? And then identifying and gaining commitment from industry partners for a proof of concept and at least one pilot project. We're hoping for more, obviously. And there we've allotted, at least up until now, 6 months. The proof of concept phase using a digital sandbox, so real data, but not yet real goods, is the second step, and defining the core pilot project, where when we move into the third step, we want to carry out a core project, pilot project, with a minimum of 2 players, no more than 4 for starters, using real data and real goods. So really moving from the proof of concept to the pilot project phase with real goods, and then extending that core project to other pilot projects, either by including more industry partners or really adding on to the number of pilot projects that we carry out. And for that, the proof of concept phase, as you see, is a period of 3 months that we've allotted, and 5 to 6 months for conducting pilot projects. And then using the information we gain from the proof of concept and the pilot project or pilot projects, transfer the results to any changes or additions or revisions that we might need to make, and then really move into the so-called go live phase, and simultaneously also define the business model and contract concept for the next phase. So that's the approach that we have set up with our collaboration partners and that we have at least started to carry out. What have been the challenges that we've faced up until now? There's been a reserved interest from potential industry partners. Everybody has talked about GS1 standards and blockchain, or just blockchain. So the interest is there, but there's also a bit of a reserved interest from the standpoint that, at least here in Switzerland, several industry partners or firms have said, okay, you know, blockchain is a means, but it's not the end. So we really want to make sure we understand what the added value is of blockchain before we move forward. There's also a certain unfamiliarity with the potential that blockchain as a technology offers. There's a hesitation to experiment with blockchain, even on a small scale. I know a couple of years ago when I attended an event at GS1 Germany, who conducted a pilot project in 2018 and are now extending that pilot project. One of my colleagues there said, well, you know, at some point you have to stop talking about blockchain and you just have to start experimenting. But that's easier said than done. And the last challenge that we faced, also with respect to the InnoSwiss project, has been an insufficient commitment of resources and time. What we've found, at least what I've found, is that everybody's very gung-ho and enthusiastic at the beginning, but as the months go on and the project time moves on, for whatever reason, people are then more hesitant to commit the resources and time. What are the lessons learned for us, for me, is for one, to lay out the benefits more clearly in the business case. I think that added value that blockchain, using GS1 standards with blockchain, needs to be communicated more clearly, even if that means perhaps making some assumptions along the way, but that message has to be made more clearly. Another message is incorporating aspects beyond traceability and transparency. So really the added value of blockchain, or integrating standards and blockchain, needs to be made more clearly. What we have found is that this building block approach that I touched upon earlier, this proof of concept and pilot projects, these phases, they are seen as a good approach. And last but not least, is planning even more time for the initial steps. So be it our involvement in innovation projects, be it our collaboration with other partners, I think the bottom line is you need even more time than what you think you may need. What does that mean for GS1 Switzerland? As I mentioned before, refining our business case. So really, perhaps doing a better job or providing more information about the, or comparing the benefits using more traditional data sharing systems and blockchain. So that companies perhaps are less hesitant, become less hesitant to give it a go. Another thing that we will do more of is focus on companies for our proof of concept and pilot projects who are already using GS1 standards. That's a great way to get your foot in the door if they're already using GS1 standards. So we will do even more of that. Our priority will shift from healthcare to retail. What we have found is not that the healthcare industry is not open to blockchain, on the contrary, but if we take a look at the entire supply chain, for which hospitals play a very, very essential role, there's just too much groundwork to be done at this time for us to be talking about blockchain. So will we participate or do this in the healthcare industry? Of course we will, but we're going to set that aside for the time being. Will we continue to collaborate in innovation projects? Yes, we will, but we will also make sure that all of the involved companies commit resources and time during the entire project and not just until halfway. And what we will continue to do is to share our knowledge and experiences with other MOs. That's been very, very helpful along the way, and we will continue to do that. So having said that, has it been a challenge? Yes, it's been a challenge for us at GS1 Switzerland, but we will continue. I think the important message here is it's not easy. But it's also not impossible, and we also see the value of continuing on our journey to integrate GS1 standards and blockchain. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Appreciate that, and hopefully I see some good questions coming in, which is great. So now we're going to turn it over to Branimir. And just a kind note, I understand today is Branimir's birthday. So happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
From the Trace Labs team who gave me the hint. And of course, us here at GS1. So thanks for working on your birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure, sure. You should be able to share now.
All right, I'm going that way. Let me know if you see my screen.
Perfect. Perfect.
All right. Maybe not sure if you just see the presentation or you see a bit of the rest of the stuff. So
it's just presentation mode.
Perfect.
It's the proper mode, yeah.
All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Branimir, the birthday guy today, but I'm also the co-founder and the CTO of Trace Labs Origin Trail core developers. I will be explaining today how we utilize decentralized technologies. I will first explain it, and then I will show you a demo, which combines GS1 standards, distributed ledger technologies, which include both what we call the decentralized knowledge graph, as well as blockchain. So without further ado, because I tend to explain a lot of these things, I'll try to be as concise, but also go into some deeper technical elements that for those of you in the crowd who are a little bit more technical and eager to know more how this works. So really quickly, what we really stand for as Trace Labs is sustainable supply chains. And we believe that they are only possible if people and organizations can benefit from trusted knowledge exchange, both. What do we mean by this trusted knowledge exchange? I will explain a bit further, but we are very committed to sustainability, and I will explain how technology helps in this regard. What we've been doing over the years, just a very short intro. We started actually the first project as students in 2011, but we founded the company in 2013, started with a centralized version of Origin Trail. So we didn't even know about blockchain at the time, to be honest. We were building traditional database centralized systems using GS1 standards at the time. We've been involved with many European projects and also within the Walmart Food Safety Collaboration Center in China. 2018, we've actually launched the Origin Trail Decentralized Network because of the reasons I will explain in the next couple of slides, as we really saw the benefit of decentralized technologies. And so far, we've partnered up with companies such as the British Standards Institution, Oracle, and many other next generation internet initiatives in Europe. And what we're building on from this year on is something we call the Origin Trail Knowledge Economy, which is really designed to bring this trusted knowledge exchange to the masses. Now, when I start explaining the problem, what we're really trying to solve, it kind of starts falling into pieces really well. So from the get-go, from 2013, we've been working on really solving the issue of transparency and traceability within supply chains. And one of the main issues here has been that if you look at let's say a very simple example of a supply chain, you would see that there's multiple companies involved, and this is a very simple linear example. None of these companies has full visibility in the chain, or simply put, nobody has all the data in one place so that they can actually see anything about the product they want to know. But everybody has kind of a piece of data, and what they really do know is a little bit of what's been going on before them in the supply chain. So one step back and one step forward to where what they have shipped the products to. And this really is, in a way, a data silo problem. There's a lot of IT systems that have evolved over the last couple of decades, ERP systems or any sort of custom systems that might have been made that are meant to solve issues on the level of one organization. But when it comes to attacking issues such as transparency and safety, traceability, we cannot remain within the confines of one organization or what one organization is able to see. We somehow need to obtain the visibility throughout the whole chain. That means really sharing this data or knowledge, as we will see in the next couple of slides. So right now, that's really hard to do. And there are three key problems that we have identified over the last years that are really the ones that need to be solved in order to overcome this problem. So these three problems are problems of interoperability, the issues of interconnectivity, and issues of integrity. And these three problems can be solved by different technologies. Some of it is where blockchain helps, so I'll explain that today. But keep in mind that these three are the main issues, and I will explain how. So what Origin Trail really does is moves data from its currently scattered, non-interoperable form towards solving those three issues that I just mentioned, which is actually moving it towards knowledge and finally wisdom. And some of you might have seen such a pyramid before. It's known as DIKW pyramid, where at the bottom we have data. Data is growing exponentially all around the world, not just in supply chain systems and ERPs, but really all kinds of devices that actually contain pieces of information that might be relevant, that might even be mobile phones of consumers that are at the end of the chain, or maybe some devices that are, as we'll see later in the demo, used to inspect certain conditions and certain events in the supply chain. But bottom line is we have a very scattered situation, and data is all around. It's very valuable, but it's hard to get something out of it. And the first problem that needs to be solved there is really the problem of interoperability. This is due to everybody storing and keeping data in their own way. And that's kind of an issue that would be similar to everybody speaking their own language. And for obvious reasons today at this presentation, we're speaking English, which is kind of a common language for everybody. That's where GS1 standards help very much on the data level, starting with GS1 standards like EPCS, which we will see again in the demo, is where we attack the issue of interoperability on the data level. Following the data level, once we've tackled the interoperability issue, we go towards the layer of information. And that means really getting data connected, getting concepts connected, and potentially and ideally across the different data sets coming from different places. So we actually go into interconnectivity. We can relate concepts, we can define these relations, and not just we as humans, but also machines are able to read them and then make some use of that. So once we have interoperability and interconnectivity, then we get to the knowledge layer. So all of a sudden we have this interconnected standardized data, which we infuse with integrity. And getting integrity into the picture is really important because and in this mass of information, I'm sure everybody's seen this even on a personal level through the pandemic, but also other issues. It's getting very hard to trust information that we are being shared with. That comes from just regular news, but also let's say a plain certificate. There's been situations where certificates for example, personally protective equipment have been forged, and it's actually been hard to determine this fact. So if there was a way to infuse integrity into the data itself, that would be very valuable and provide actually full integrity into this interconnected and interoperable knowledge that has been formed. Finally, going into the layer of wisdom, where multiple different applications for different industries can be made based on this interconnected data, which is machine readable, interoperable, and has integrity. I will show one of these applications today that has been actually applied in the rail industry and is used for data sharing within several partners within the rail industry using several technologies. Which technologies? Well, I'll explain in the next couple of slides, but essentially the main first technology, as I said, is getting towards interoperability, and that's where GS1 EPCS standards are being used. Together on the interconnectedness layer, we pair it with the origin trail decentralized knowledge graph. And to explain how that works is basically all of the data gets into the informational form, as we've seen in the previous slide, interconnected. On the example where we show the issue, we had such a very simple supply chain. And in this case, we would see each of them sharing their own EPCS interconnected data with each other, and this data seamlessly connecting using GS1 standards, using the GS1 identifiers, and particularly in the case we will be seeing GIAI identifiers in the rail industry. So in this way, sharing this data is much easier, and it helps create kind of an overlay database across the whole supply chain. Blockchains, and actually multiple blockchains being used by the origin trail decentralized knowledge graph, provide integrity to this data, the last layer of that we've shown. meaning that for any piece of this graph that you take, a random piece, you'll be able to determine with 100% that this data has not been changed, that it's immutable, and it's actually really been issued by these actors in the supply chain. And that's a very short explanation. I'll show that on a demo as well. The next concept really that's also important to have in mind, and I'm sure everybody's already, a lot of you having this question right now is, all right, if everybody's sharing this data, what happens with data that's really private or should not be shared? Well, this is where the decentralized knowledge graph helps a lot as well, because it enables these private subgraph, the notion of these private subgraphs that each of these supply chain participants can have. So basically meaning that every one of them has some information that is kept within their own domain, but is still part of the larger graph, meaning that it can be queried. As let's say in this case, as a retailer, I could request this data from the processing facility, even though it's not readily available in a public sense. So in that way, it is possible to build very interesting business models such as data marketplaces and knowledge marketplaces. So again, to reiterate how this works, the decentralized knowledge graph enables interoperability, interconnectivity, and integrity of the data by utilizing blockchain technologies. It actually presents a neutral middleware for trusted data exchange. Neutral meaning that it doesn't favorize any existing technology, meaning also any existing blockchain, so you can use multiple blockchains with it. It helps scale because using a lot of data through a blockchain and sending a lot of those through transactions can be very inefficient, especially if using a public blockchain, like for example, Ethereum. I'll just give a short example. If you're sharing 1 kilobyte of data through Ethereum, which is huge for Ethereum purposes, it can cost you up to thousands of dollars for just one transaction. So obviously the scale of this is not ideal, but instead, if you only store a very miniature fingerprint of this data or cryptographic hash on Ethereum, which is around 32 bytes, you get quite a big saving, and keeping this data still in the decentralized knowledge graph retains the properties of decentralization, meaning immutability and accessibility. Finally, to reiterate again, the decentralized knowledge graph is based on completely on open standards. It's actually open source technology and based on GS1, but as well as W3C and ISO standards. So I'll go and show you actually a demo how this works. But before we go into the demo, just to introduce what the demo is about. So we'll be looking at how the problems of the rail industry have been approached with the specific technologies. And to reiterate again, and just to make sure that everybody understands, the rail industry partners that we have from Swiss Railways, they never came to us asking about blockchain. They actually came about asking to solve these 3 key problems. How do we see what's going on within our supply chains so that we can understand the safety aspects, so that we can understand the aspects of each particular event that's going on in our supply chain. And basically the 3 key things that they needed to solve was, how would they speak the same language, which is the interoperability aspect, how they will get that across company borders, which is the interconnectivity aspect, and how do they create this expanded exchange of standardized data sets. So I'll actually jump into the demo right now. Can anybody just give me a brief hint of how much time do we have left? Because
yes, you have approximately 6 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to use 3. So if you are still seeing my screen, you should be seeing my browser. And this is actually what is called the Decentralized EPCS repository. For those of you who do not know much about EPCS, it's really a standard for data sharing within supply chains, answering the questions where, who, why, and when, and what really has been moving around the supply chain. So really quickly here, we see a bunch of EPCS data that is actually ingested and can be ingested through either APIs or manually imported here, as I'll actually do it right now. So I'll actually ingest an EPCS data set. And through this ingestion, a couple of things happen. First of all, data gets checked for GS1 compliance, as you can see here. I'm also able to preview this data set directly in the EPCS repository, which, as you can see, is a GS1 EPCS data set with a certain event, just as an example, but with also a very interesting aspect here that is part of that permissioning scheme that I mentioned for the graphs. So as for those of you who know, you will see that this is an extension to EPCS, which actually enables hiding this particular permission data. Apart from that, there's also the ability to edit any information before it gets published to the whole consortium. And this means that after the data gets immutable, then you actually do not get to change it again. But if you would like to, you can actually do it here. And if there's any errors detected by the system as a user, you might be able to see that immediately. So as you can see here, I uploaded a file which has a bunch of errors. So the system first helps solve this interoperability problem by making sure the data is structured well and that it contains all the necessary information. Then next, the system supports something called the EPCS push and pull choreographies in the distributed way. And as you can see here, I actually published a data set prior to this, and I've used the origin trail decentralized network for that. And this is really one of the aspects of the network is that multiple parties can actually see this data. So this was actually SBB's account, a demo account, and I'll go ahead and look for this identifier, which I actually copied here for the sake of being quick. So for a specific GII from another company's account, and this is through the Epcs Explorer. The Epcs Explorer is really an interface that looks very much like Google. So you would type in, like a Google search, you would type in this identifier, and it looks around the whole network throughout the decentralized knowledge graph, asking all these participants, hey, do you have some data on this? And due to the interconnectivity aspect, we actually get the data set back. And for this data set, we can fetch it over the network and verify its integrity immediately in the interface. Actually, under the hood, a lot of this verification steps are happening. Things like verifying that the data hasn't been changed, that it's really been issued by SBB, that all of these corresponding cryptographic proofs are to be found on blockchain. And this obviously is very technical, so it's not something that the users definitely want to see, but the interface does it for them. And finally, as the other company, I'm able to download that both as an XML data set or a JSON data set, which is actually being structured according to the upcoming EPCS 2.0 standard. If I would like to go and check this integrity in blockchain, that's also possible because this actually implements Ethereum blockchain. So if I were to jump on an Ethereum block explorer, for those of you familiar, you'll be able to see all the transaction details there as well. And that's the shortest possible demo I could give. I'll just like to finish off to showing that there's multitude of GS1 standards being used and implemented, including the GS1 digital link, but also additional W3C standards. For those of you who are interested in asking some more, I'm available even after a presentation. And thank you for the time. I'll stop sharing now.
All right, thanks, Branimir. That was a sprint there at the end. That was very efficient. So thank you. The chat has been blowing up in a good way today, which is great. So there's a lot of questions, and I need my friend here on the team, Deanne, to tell us where we need to start because there are so many.
We have many questions and comments. The audience is definitely very active today. Maybe let's start with the first question from Andrew Steele, actually. That was for Jacqueline. Jacqueline, was it a challenge to get the hackathon to agree to utilize GS1 ID keys? Did they know much about GS1 beforehand? You're on mute, Jackie.
You're on mute, Jackie.
Briefly, no, it was not a challenge to get the hackathon to agree to utilize the GS1 ID keys. That was not a problem. But most people in the hacker teams, the 5 hacker teams, there were a total of 25 people in those 5 hacker teams. They did not know much about GS1 beforehand. So that's why we provided, before the hackathon officially got underway, we provided them with information about GS1 standards, and then we're there during the entire time to answer any questions that they may have.
Thank you, Jacqueline. There's a question from Fritz. There was 2 actually. Let's start with the first one. Is the blockchain approach scalable enough to work for all items and stakeholders for the industries we serve, from your point of view? And maybe, Bramir, if you have a point of view as well, of course, feel free. Jacqueline first.
Should I start? Well, that's what I'm hoping to find out. I have to say at this point, I'm not sure if it's scalable enough to work for all items and stakeholders for all industries, because at least from a GS1 Switzerland standpoint, we haven't even gotten that far yet. We're hoping to get enough industry partners on board to at least conduct a proof of concept, to conduct at least one pilot project. What I can say is that our colleagues in GS1 Germany, they are, you may be familiar with this, they are looking or continuing to look into pallet exchange as an opportunity. Our colleagues in GS1 Australia have looked at the retail business, in particular the mango business with Manbulu as a provider, or as the retailer for mangoes. So in the retail industry or in the logistics industry, there seems to be scalability. But if that applies, or to which extent that applies to all industries, I'm hoping to find that out within the next, let's say, year or 2 or 3. So it's hard for me to answer that question at the moment.
Thanks, Jacqueline. So it's a good question.
Yeah.
Do you want to comment on that?
Absolutely. I think it's the most important question, as it's been around for the longest time, especially within the public blockchain scene. And the problem with blockchain industry is that it's a very cool industry, but there's a lot of misinformation around and hype. And one of these things is that one day blockchain will ultimately scale and be super simple. I would disagree with that, because from a technical perspective, blockchain is actually designed to be a bit of a bottleneck. That's where the security comes from. And not to go too far into explaining why, but I would just make a simple analogy. Blockchain is kind of like a big ship, a very hard one, and you don't use it to, or like a big truck, you don't use it to go buy groceries. You use something smaller for that, something that scales a bit better. And in that sense, that's not to say that blockchain is not useful. It's absolutely very useful, and I'm a big believer in the technology, but you should not use it as a database. If you use it as a database today, let's say with Ethereum, it's going to cost you more than anything you use of the technology in your whole company. I can guarantee that. Even in the years to come, the scale will increase for sure, but it will not increase a million times or hundreds of millions of times that is needed to support such a case. So my personal belief is, and that's why we've been building Origin Trail for such a long time, is that some issues should not be tackled by blockchain, and you should actually keep them outside and solve the scalability issues by not overusing something that's not designed for that problem in the first place. But that's to say why Origin Trail from the beginning has not decided for one particular blockchain. We're designing the system to work with multiple blockchains, so that not only there's choice and freedom without vendor lock-in in that sense, but also that it can use blockchain in a scalable way, as in all of the blockchains at a particular moment in time. So anything that might be at the best solution for a particular problem at a particular moment.
Thank you for this additional explanation. That may be very specific, but any thought or any experience on sustainability footprint with blockchain? From Jacqueline or Branimir, any case on that? No?
At the moment, we don't have experience with sustainable footprint, but that's what we're hoping to gain knowledge about with one of our collaboration partners. So as soon as we have the opportunity to do something along those lines, I will be more than happy to provide our experiences and insights about that.
I can just add a very short note as we're working together with one of the best teams in the blockchain industry, which is the team behind Polkadot and Ethereum called Parity from Germany. They're actually transitioning the systems from proof of work systems that are the ones that cause all these energy issues and really consume so much, moving towards something called proof of stake, where there's not nearly as much need to use so much energy to run Bitcoin or Ethereum or similar blockchains. So there's going to be a lot of improvement on that front, but yet it remains to be seen, and there's things still to be figured out. But in the future, we will see much more energy efficient blockchains, and systems should not be such a huge problem as some of them actually present today.
Thank you. Now, there was this question from Slobodan Romat from GS1 Croatia, which triggered some further comments from Meira from GS1 Germany, actually. So what is the main advantage of using GS1 standards with blockchain technology versus using GS1 standards with more classic technologies? And the comment from Meira was like, are we even in the position actually on having an opinion on that? So that was more for Jacqueline, but I mean, yeah, again, feel free to comment afterward.
From my perspective, again, at the moment, I don't know what the real advantage is. What I believe the advantage could be, at least, is in terms of time to conduct transactions. That's a benefit, or I see that as a benefit. The immutability of data, the fact that you cannot change data once it has been placed on the blockchain. And because it's a decentralized technology, that there's less infrastructure in the mid or longer term that would be required in comparison to classic technologies. But again, you know, this is something that, you know, you either read about or you hear about, but until you get in a position, or you're in a position to really try it out with industry partners in the sense of, using the proof of concept, and then more importantly, pilot projects, it's difficult to say. But that's also something that I'm looking forward to really confirming, you know, in the business case that we will now define with our collaboration partners. We'll have to make assumptions, but that will be something that we want to see, okay, were our assumptions correct? Or is there a difference between using blockchain as opposed to classical technologies? That's something we still have to discover.
Now there is this related question, and maybe that's the question was posed by Jan towards the end of the chat. What are the criteria or questions to ask to decide if blockchain can be the right solution? So maybe that's a concrete way actually to help MOs today.
And if I could start on that one, we have those questions. They are actually in our the most recent position paper that we've put out as GS1 together with several MOs that actually talk. They're meant to coach someone looking at traceability solutions that have blockchain components to them, and ask these fundamental questions of the solution provider across the table to make sure they know, and they become, you know, very aware of what it is they're buying, what's the state of readiness, what's the scalability, which we were talking about, and a number of other aspects. I'll put the link to that in the, you can find it on the MO Zone on the solutions page under blockchain, but I can put the link in the chat too. If Branimir and Jackie want to comment, please, that's great too.
Yeah, maybe I can just quickly jump in. So from the perspective of, and maybe that's also related to the previous question, why not GS1 without blockchain, what's the difference? And the difference, really key difference we've observed in the cases we've been developing, and that's both POCs, but also a lot of production implementations right now. I've shown one yesterday, is the difference really meaning that how do you govern this data exchange between multiple parties? Is there a party that's a little more, let's say, entitled, something of a centralized actor, if that's really okay when it comes to data? Exchanging data through a decentralized system provides this additional security, which is very valuable when it comes to things like a certification or just generally information on safety. For example, for SBB, that's very valuable to check about everything that's going on around their supply chains. So the key reasons here being safety of data, integrity of information, and also the governance. Because once you start growing such a system, actually SBB has a very good example on this. It's really hard to grow it outside of a small number of players if you're not using a distributed or decentralized approach. Because at some point, this centralized player becomes a problem. Somebody doesn't want to join due to whatever political, geographical reason or something. You get into this trouble. So that's where decentralized technologies are great, because they remove this middle player. And again, GS1 as the common language, providing common language and identifiers fits really well into this. But it's, in my opinion, is even more important than blockchain. It gives more value, at least in this point in time, than just applying blockchain by itself. So I would definitely encourage everyone to look into the standards first, get the interoperability and interconnectivity solved, and then approach blockchain as the first, the last sort of thing in line, to be honest.
Thank you. So we have a lot of questions. We'll probably not be able to address all in a couple of minutes, but there is an important one. I think it's for you, Tim, actually, for Global Office, from Jan Westerkamp. Is GS1 Global Office monitoring all blockchain efforts going on at all by all MOs, where all MOs are involved? We don't want multiple solutions for the same case in a different way. And then there were comments saying, actually, do we really want the same way in all MOs, or shouldn't all MOs build their own way to adapt to the customers also? So 2 questions. Are you monitoring the project that MOs are involved? And should we really try to have the same way or not?
Yeah, so good question. I saw, and there's an interesting discussion there too with some of the suggestions coming in. So we, like I indicated, we don't have the resource to know what all MOs are doing at any given time, not just on blockchain, but traceability as well, which is the other area that Deanne and I work on as a team. What we do try to stay informed as best we can. Where we bring those forward, those things that we become aware of, we bring them forward here at events like this, but we also have a blockchain member organization interest group that you can become a member of. And we don't have calls set up yet for 2021. That's coming soon, but that's where we will have MOs come on, present their blockchain projects or their challenges, and do some sharing. So given this is great to see some renewed interest, because as the MO interest group wasn't getting a lot of interest as we started to close down last year, or come to the end of 2020. So with you as participating today, all of you in the GS1 organization, we can put you on that invite list. And if you choose and you want to be part of the MO interest group, you can do that. Come and share and learn what others are doing. I think that might cover it, Deanne. As far as setting up a blockchain to monitor all the projects, if that would bring everybody in the MO community forward to actually participate and tell us what they're doing, I'd be all for it. I don't even know what kind of budget I'd need to do that, but it sounds like a cool idea. So I know Jeannie Duckett's on the phone, on the line today, or she was. And I know she set up a blockchain for her neighborhood to loan out tools. So I guess it's probably not that hard, not that expensive. But let's see. Thanks, Jeannie. Maybe you can coach us on that. Go ahead, Deanne. What's next?
Okay, very quickly, just to clarify maybe for everyone, there was this question, is it the official position that we consider the Epcs standard as the GS1 standard for blockchain?
No, no, it's a good question, and it's not. Epcs, and I think Slobodan mentioned this in the chat as well, and this is where we try to stay true. Blockchain is a technology for data sharing and linking information, as an example, as we've seen today. And we have to remain as GS1 technology agnostic. So Epcs should be perfectly acceptable to work with blockchain. And I think as Branimir was demonstrating, it does. But it also can work with traditional database methods and ways of sharing data. So great question, though. Very good question.
I believe we need to close the session, right?
Yeah, we do. So I know we probably could go on for another 15 minutes here, but unfortunately not. So thank you for that. The great questions and coming into chat and the answers here from our speakers today. A big thank you to Origin Trail Branimir, and also Yuri, who I think was on today, who was helping with the slides. They're great. And of course to Jackie, as always. Thanks for bringing your knowledge, the practicalities of getting things to happen with the partners that you have. Is always good for other MOs to see and understand and experience that it's not just them having a tough time. Sometimes it's in every case there.
Right. My pleasure.
Yeah. Again, I had it in my thing to post in the chat. I apologize, but I lost it in my clipboard. Go to please rate the session today. You could win a gift card and really help us improve on these in the future. So with that, we're going to bring the session to a close. I wish you a good rest of your day and a good rest of the forum. Okay? Thank you all.
Thank you.